Great. The time now is 3:32 in the afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Currie, your chairman of the Templeton Board of Selectmen. With me today is your town administrator, Terenzini.
Good day, all.
For those watching this live stream at home, we hope we have found you safe and happy as we are all finding our way in this certainly unprecedented time in our lives. This afternoon, Carter and I thought we would take the time to provide some additional details about our upcoming annual and special town meeting coming up next Wednesday, 17 June at 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. for the special. Our format for this afternoon's TCTV event is an informal event, much like our past Talk of the Town series, where selected members of the town provide an in-depth view of a department or community item. We are being live streamed on YouTube by TCTV, Cable Station 8. Thank you as always, TCTV. And therefore, we can take questions along the way and certainly at the end. When watching the live stream, I am monitoring as TCTV is monitoring as well. If you do have a question, please identify yourself as best possible. And like my favorite TV game show, please phrase your interest in the form of a question. That makes it best for us if it's not just a comment, whether you're telling us how awesome we are or telling us to go jump in a lake. We would love it if you put it in a question so that way we can actually go through your concern. First, I'd like to give you an update on the safety for the 2020 annual town meeting. And then we're going to drill down into the plain speak of all the upcoming articles and also open it up if we have time. We're looking to go about 60 minutes today. So once we get through everything, if there's time for some questions and answers, we would love to be able to do that as well. Just a quick note, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. And I want to review some of the documents that we're going to be covering today. Okay, the first document that you're going to find is the voter information guide. It has all of the information that you're going to need to follow along with the annual town meeting and the special town meeting. It has all the warrant articles, as you'll see. That is available on our website, templetonma.org. I'm sorry, it's not, that was our old website, .gov. So you have the voter information guide available online. You also have the annual town meeting warrant. You'll notice that the date does not sync up with our actual date. The town moderator has filed the appropriate documentation along the way to delay town meeting in accordance with the governor's special order. And the last item that will be very helpful to follow along today is the special town meeting warrant for June 17th at 6:30. And really what that special town meeting warrant is to encapsulate just a minor oversight that we had. The sewer budget was excluded from the first warrant. So to make sure that we're in completeness, we have a special town meeting warrant that was posted according to law. So just those are some excellent documents to follow along with. Okay, town moderator Derek Hall, also Sergeant Hall on our town's police force, has had met with several key individuals, emergency management, the school district custodian Rick Moulton, to talk about how we were going to accomplish town meeting, which I have to say, I think we're still accomplishing in a fair amount of time to be able to adopt spending authority for our upcoming fiscal year 2021. But I've heard that a lot of people are wanting to know what the details are, and those have been published on the website today. But I just want to go over a couple of those details as we move through the discussion of the process of holding town meeting, but then we go into the actual warrant articles. Okay, so what I'm reading from is the item that the town moderator and emergency management and the health department, or Witta, worked together to publish. And it's a list of 12 items. I'll go through some of the finer points of those. We are determined to make you as comfortable as possible. The safety plan has been developed to protect you, our residents, at our annual town meeting. We will be taking the following steps to ensure your safety and well-being. See if I can bring these up to follow along. I'm going to put these up so you can follow along with me. Here we go. Okay, prior to the annual town meeting at Narragansett Middle School and Narragansett High School, the school maintenance crew will be using specialized sanitizing equipment on the entire area being utilized. During the meeting, the restrooms will be disinfected on a half-hour basis. They asked that all residents please park in the middle school and high school parking area in front of the schools. Extra parking can be utilized across the street and in the high school parking lot. Please also use the entrance for the middle school to enter. Please observe 6 feet of physical distancing and 6-foot physical distancing markers will be laid out for your convenience in the hallway. If the lobby is full, please practice social distancing outside on the sidewalk. If it is raining, the hallway to the high school will be used and marked out with 6-foot increments. And of course, you know, the entrance to the middle school also has an awning above it as well in case there's inclement weather. Please put on a face covering prior to entering the building. If you do not have a face covering but would like one, CERT or community emergency response team members will be on hand with a limited supply, so you can get a mask. If you cannot wear a face covering, please maintain a 6-foot physical distancing. Upon entering and exiting the auditorium, CERT members will be on hand to dispense hand sanitizer. A quick shout out to the CERT team and Rich Curtis and the emergency management director. They will be instrumental in making sure that people are aware of what these procedures are, even if there are questions along the way. Back to the list. Once checked in, residents and other attendees will enter the auditorium and select seating in available rows. And I'm going to put up a copy of the seating plan to follow along with this bullet. Designated seats will be marked with tape. Family members who live together will be allowed to sit together, maintaining safe distances from others. Again, family members who live together will be allowed to sit together, as long as they're maintaining safe distances from others. Should you need to leave your seat, for instance, using the restroom or to go to the microphone, please make sure your face covering is worn properly. And that's as you're trying to get out of your aisleway. If you're all the way in and it's difficult to move through, you want to make sure you can maintain your distancing and keep your face covering on. Okay, I'm showing on the live stream right now a copy of what the Narragansett Middle School auditorium looks like. You'll notice that red marker has been used to scratch out every other row. Caution tape will be used to do that when you arrive, and you'll see it when you walk into the auditorium. Okay, there will be one microphone. I think you'll be able to see my cursor as I move around. There will be one microphone for use by audience members. This microphone will be controlled and adjusted by a CERT team member and disinfected as necessary. Audience members will not be allowed to touch or hold the microphone. At the conclusion or the adjournment of town meeting, please wear your face covering properly. That is to keep it on. Just because it's over doesn't mean to take off the face covering and throw it off. You might want, if you didn't have one, you might want to hang on to it. In preparation for your row being directed to exit, CERT members will dismiss attendees by rows to help with social distancing while exiting the auditorium. When exiting, certain members will be available at the exit doors to distribute hand sanitizer. And the middle school cafeteria will be designated for overflow should it be needed. And all the same sanitizing information also pertains to this space along with the above protocols. There will be simulcast and audiovisual equipment to make sure that those members in overflow will be able to participate. And lastly, but not leastly, please do not congregate in the lobby after the meeting. After exiting the building, please continue proper social distancing. Your cooperation is appreciated in making this town meeting as safe and as normal as possible. All right, Carter, I've got through my safety concerns. You think I covered everything all right?
I do, and I think that the staff has, been very aware of people's concerns and done their best to try to assure them that they can attend with a level of confidence in their personal safety. And I would encourage as many people as possible to attend and participate in this annual meeting.
I agree, and I know that they've been working on this for a while, and some of the community thinks it might be a little bit late. I think the fact that we knew town meeting was going to, we kept telling people that we were going to hold it, first on June 3rd, then the 17th. I think there can be an assumption and expectation of planning, but certainly I understand the frustration and people really wanting to know the drill down information. Just knowing that we were going to hold it and hold it as safely as possible. Now we're able to really make sure that people have that peace of mind so they can contribute in their government. Okay. I am watching the chat. We do have some watchers out there, but I do not have a question as of yet. As I mentioned, some of the documents that we'll be talking about in a moment, the safety concerns and that seating chart are out on the web as well, which links to our Facebook account for social media. Okay, Carter, would you like to?
Sure. So I would ask if you could go back to the voters guide for a minute and
Sure.
go to, well, let's go to page for one first, and then we'll do it at that point. So there are a number of articles. If you could scroll down to page 8, please. Actually, one more, please, Mike. One more page.
Sure.
There we go. So I just wanted to show people the structure of the voter information guide. You have a header box that shows you what article it is, what it's about, who submitted it, and what vote is required. Then next you have the anticipated motion. In some cases, that may be a more detailed or marked up, but in general, after success with this at the fall town meeting, it continues to move in the direction of simpler motions. So in this case, it would be to waive the reading and approve the article as published, accepting a couple of phrases. We'll show you that in just a moment. Then there's a summary, and what that's intended to do is to try to give the reader as simple a explanation as we can about why this article is even in the warrant. In this case, it's to authorize the payment of late bills. We have to get all of our bills in by July 15th and paid by July 15th. Or if we know a bill is out there and it's not going to be here on time, we can encumber the funds to be carried over until the bill is actually received. Inevitably. And it's certainly, a question from some, and it's a nuisance for us, but inevitably, we have one or two vendors that just don't get their bills in on time. In this instance, if you'll scroll down a little bit more, so now you'll see the advisory committee comments and recommendation. Their pre-town meeting at which they'll discuss this is tomorrow night. That'll be broadcast live on TCTV starting at 6:30 p.m. So we certainly encourage folks to watch that. Unfortunately, their recommendations weren't received in time to be printed this year. COVID and remote meetings and just certainly have made life a little bit more difficult for all of us. Then you will see, so their report will be issued separately. Then you see the original warrant article in its entirety. And that's, if it had been read at length, what would have been read out. And the reason we do it this way, waiving the reading, is in some cases, the warrant article could be very simple, like this one. In other cases, they can sometimes be, especially zoning articles, 6 pages, 8 pages or longer. So that's the way the book is put together. That's what that warrant article is about. And all of these articles follow that same pattern. The header, the anticipated motion, the summary, and then the original warrant article in its entirety. Moving on to Article 2. This is to appropriate some additional monies. At the end of the year, we always have a deficit in the snow and ice account, and that has to be paid up. If we don't pay it up, the Department of Revenue deducts that deficit from what we can spend, so we would have to actually cut next year's budget. So every year that I've been with you, certainly we've paid that off. And then inevitably, there are some additional things that crop up. The actual anticipated motion is not spelled out at this point because sometimes things change in the final days going into the town meeting. So for instance, veteran services, possibly some money there, although if a transfer in front of the advisory committee is approved, we may not actually need that money at all.
Right.
Litigation and COVID, those legal bills continue to come in. We'll get a better glimpse of them next week. And somebody said, you know, COVID, why do you have legal bills on COVID? The number of state laws that we've had to deal with. Well, the law said this, but here's the reality we face today. The new expanded paid sick leave act from the federal. Well, we had to write a policy. Here's how we have to enforce it. The expanded family and medical leave act. The law required us with very short notice to develop a written policy, communicate that to the unions. So there's actually quite a substantial amount of legal work flowing out of this COVID event.
Right.
So the final warrant article will be a little bit different. It won't have the seed money for the summer camp because that unfortunately has to be canceled. But that's what that is about. And any appropriation would be within that 147,500.
You know, Cart, if I could just jump in for a moment. That's a good point about the anticipated, let me just scroll back up to that. So you have the anticipated motion. For those who are watching or watching this afterwards, again, the intent today was to really have some plain speak about the articles, and I think we're achieving that. Just as a note, as we go through, the town moderator runs this entire process. The Board of Selectmen present and observing social distancing and otherwise. The role of the selectmen in a meeting is really kind of like Hollywoodish in nature. We're basically there as eye candy and to read the motions as they go. So the selectmen are a part of that process to receive any, even on the day of. I can remember in the last one, we get them, we sign them if they haven't been signed yet, to make sure the moderator gets a copy and that we're reading the correct motion and that we also have it up on the screen. Actually, that's a great thing to mention as well, Carter. The screen will be used and all of the articles will actually be, so if someone's gets upset that we're reading in a shortened piece of an article up on the screen in very big text, will be the actual article with all the numbers and otherwise, so people can actually see and hear and follow along.
So moving on to Article 3, that's what we call a consent agenda. It's items that are pretty much the same from year to year, and they're bundled together to, my apologies, I haven't gotten there quite yet. So last year, the town meeting gave the Board of Selectmen authority to cut the budget by an amount that the school district budget exceeded. And when that was all done, it came to roughly $71,000 that the town selectmen had to cut out of the general fund budget. In reporting that to DOR, it was reported as a reduction of the school budget, whereas it really should have been reported as a reduction of the general fund budget. The DOR had some other questions that we've discussed with them. But the real issue at the end of the day was that this cut was reported as a cut of the school budget and not a cut of the general fund budget. So the selectmen did cut the general fund budget. We have not spent that $71,000, but in order to true up the school district budget, we have to appropriate this money. Now, we've already paid it all. It's not actually being expended. It's not even being sent to them, and it will roll over into free cash upon the close of the fiscal year. Our next article is that consent agenda that I started to speak about out of place. My apologies. This is where articles that are pretty much the same from year to year, or that we've spoken to the meeting about before, are bundled for the purposes of economy of time. Last year, there were 3 paragraphs. It's the same this year. The difference is that in paragraph C, we're proposing to increase the compensation for the electrical inspector and the plumbing and gas inspector, roughly $5,000 apiece. These people are paid 80% of the permit fees that we receive. The balance goes to the general fund. If there are no permits in a given year, they get no money. If it's $10,000 is the permits, they get $8,000. So it's 80%, not to exceed these new numbers. The other new paragraph, paragraph D, is something we spoke of at the fall town meeting, giving people a heads up that we would do this. When people order a Lyft ride or an Uber ride, there's a 20-cent surcharge on that. 10 cents goes to the state, 10 cents comes to the town of Templeton. It's pretty short money for us. I think it was around $35, give or take, last year. But we have to wait to, under the old system, we have to wait till we receive it, wait for the town meeting, appropriate the money, and it becomes an article, warrant article all by itself. So what we're doing here is making an appropriation of such money as may be received. And that way we don't have to wait, because we also have to get this money spent in a very narrow window and report on it to the state. So we've added this paragraph D to the consent agenda. And if you scroll down through it, Mike, paragraph A stays the same. Paragraph B is the same as last year. Paragraph C is the same, except those changes to the amounts, and we've added paragraph D going forward for future years.
So just following through reports of town officers, that again, the town 2019 town report, if you haven't seen that, that's out on the web. You're except by this consent agenda, you're basically saying, yep, we got that. We saw that it's not retroactive. It's probably a wrong term to use that, Carter, but it's items that have already been done that we're accepting. It's almost
Yes.
like you're doing minutes at a town meeting for all the normal business that we do.
That is correct. So Article 5, the selectmen can set the fees for most things, except the demand fee for non-payment of taxes. That has to be set according to the DOR by the town meeting. The fee is currently set at $10. That was put in place in 2008, and it's truthfully not providing sufficient motivation for payments. We're having some folks who it just doesn't motivate them to pay on time. So the treasurer collector has asked that that be increased from $10 to $15. She thinks that'll be a better motivation. We put a small chart in the budget book that's still kind of in the mid-range of what folks are looking at in our region. And the change would not be effective until July 1 of 2021. So that would not affect any of the fiscal 21. It wouldn't go into effect until fiscal 22. That originally had been proposed for January of 21, but the board had made some requests, and so we changed that to July 1 of 2021 to provide a little more time before it's implemented.
Right. Yeah. I recall the discussion. We were putting this warrant together, and we certainly knew the environment by which we were doing so to increase a fee in this environment. But we thought this needs to go to the people. We can't. It has to be in the warrant, and a lot of the facts are exactly the way that the treasurer collector had explained. So again, this is your town, this is your government. So just to understand that background that Carter gave for why the demand fee becomes a true demand fee, to make sure that people are taking action on improving their government, which is a good thing. We fund ourselves.
Article 6. So folks may remember that a little over a year ago, the town put out a request for proposals for folks who were interested in buying the Baldwinville Elementary School. We got a single proposal. There was some zoning work that was done around that time to create an overlay district that would allow for cannabis cultivation if that was the successful proposal. And unfortunately, that developer withdrew. So we re-advertised the building. And this time we got two proposals. One was for market affordable housing, and the other was, again, for a cannabis cultivator. Each of those developers proposed to pay $500,000 to the town for the building, and each had some varying pluses and minuses that are in different documents on the website. The select board has voted to designate MPZ Development of Milton, Mass. As the preferred developer, and we're in the process of drafting those various documents now. In order to keep this process moving forward, the select board is now at a point where it needs formal town action to be able to be authorized to sell the building. We have put deeper into the document a copy of the several parcels that would be sold as part of this, and that would allow us to move forward. This does take a 2/3 vote. It will be some time before the project actually is in construction, but they need that purchase and sales agreement in hand in order to be able to approach their financing, look for the tax credits, and feel comfortable in investing all of the kinds of monies that they need to invest in this thing to bring it to fruition.
And I just want to make a comment too, Carter, that the screening committee that had given the report to the Board of Selectmen, had made that recommendation as well, and that was certainly a part of. Yep.
It was very close. They were neck and neck because each had substantial merit and each had
Yeah, they absolutely did.
some constraints or risks associated with them.
Yep.
But you're right. I thank you for pointing that out. We assembled a 5-member citizen review panel. We had someone from the advisory committee, someone from the planning board. We had a neighborhood resident on it. We had a member of the select board, and I believe the historic commission, or perhaps it was the CPC. But we put those 5 folks together. They each got lengthy presentations from both developers, and both developers were well received. Just at the end of the day, after balancing everything out, the town select board felt MPZ was the best. Now, I do want to just say that this does not mean we have necessarily lost the revenue in tax and job creation from the alternate developer. We have been working with them, shown them a number of other sites in town, and I don't want to get into the particulars, but they have a serious interest in one of them, and I look forward to the possibility they might bring that one to fruition as well. So for those who are concerned, I hope they will understand. There's 2, one has to be picked, but we have gotten out of our way to try to make sure we don't necessarily lose the other one. And Laurie Witta has done a great job of putting together those alternate location packages for Eden to look at.
I agree. I think at one point, Carter, I forget who said it, but the proposals were so good. We wish we had 2 middle schools to sell.
I do wish we had 2 schools to sell. That's exactly right. So we're
gonna opt out of that one. But
we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope we get this one brought to fruition fairly quickly. And I think it could be a major contributor to the community.
Absolutely. And for those watching or will watch the recording, those deliberations of the screening committee are also available in TCTV's YouTube library.
Article 7 is a general bylaw amendment. So there were 2 sections of the bylaws that are pretty much exactly the same. One was in the duties of the town administrator, but one sat over in the finance section, section 28-7. So what we're proposing to do to make sure it's only in one location so that they're not duplicative, there's no way they would get confused, or if you needed to amend one so you don't forget to amend the other, is simply to strike the one that is not needed, which is section 59-6, leading the full authority set forth in the finance section of the bylaws as opposed to the duties of the town administrator.
Great. That one's got some good self-explanatory aspects to it. Thank you.
So Article 8, here's another one that's kind of, just further refinement of the bylaws. This is to make sure that the intent of the new bylaws aligns. Right now, the bylaws as codified require the town clerk to print a booklet every 5 years. Well, what was once upon a time probably 10 or 12 pages today is 260 pages. And in the 1950s, when this section of the bylaws was adopted, there was no internet. So this would continue to be published on the town's website. We'll have the full 260 pages here in Town Hall and at the library for people to review in paper. Certainly, if they would like a copy of that entire document, we can print one and make it available at cost. But again, this is just Town Council's advice to kind of continue to improve the bylaws as we go through this continual process of improvement.
Kind of like when your bank asks you to go paperless.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Now, what do you think if we had been printing 260-page plus documents, what do you think the cost savings is to the community? In the thousands, the tens of thousands?
Well, truthfully, if we have to continue to print the booklet, which is the 260 pages, we would probably only print 5 at a time. But they are now at a position where you'd have to put them in a binder.
Right.
So we're not looking at saving a substantial amount of money, I don't think. But it does clean up the language quite a bit.
Roger. Thank you.
So this one I put under the heading of it's time.
Right.
This select board, this warrant article proposes to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to that of Select Board. It reflects society's increasing inclusivity and equality. As by way of example, this year's Board of Selectmen includes 3 women. The statewide Selectmen's Association has changed their name this past year in January at the conference, Mike, you were at with me. And over the past several years, almost 90 towns, almost a third of the Commonwealth's towns so far, perhaps little right around there, have changed the name to the Select Board. So this is simply a statement of who we are and what we are as a community. And I leave that to people to ponder. It's not intended to be politically correct. It's simply intended to reflect society today.
I agree, Carter. And you know, at the annual Mass Municipal Association meeting, there was you could say it was a buzz, a lot of excitement about it. People liked this wave of you know, trying to make the language match reality, and that was it was kind of an exciting thing for us to put this forward, especially since the majority is not select men but select women. So select board, I think, is overdue, and I'm glad to be in the top third of our cities and towns in Massachusetts that will make that a reality, hopefully. Carter, just a quick go back to the booklets and the printing. Deb Wilder on the live chat had said it was possibly a time saving as well as money savings for printing out books.
It is. They used to be printed out. I don't know how much time it would take, but it's really, I don't want to mislead people that it's a substantial amount of time that'll be saved or a substantial amount of money. I think it just reflects the way business is done today, and people can still get them. If they want one, call. We'll be happy to print it out, get it in a binder for you, tell you what it'll cost you to do that. But just to print them, to have them sitting there on the shelf in anticipation that somebody might want them does seem wasteful, because we really would have to have probably 5 at any given time available.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on to Article 10.
Article 10 simply reflects Article 9. So the bylaws are really the general bylaws, if you will. That's how we organize ourselves, when we're going to hold town meeting, if we're going to have an ordinance on fences or a dog control or something. And then the second half of our bylaws are the zoning bylaws. So if people agree with Article 9 that yes, they want to change the references in the general bylaws to select board, then they would need to adopt this companion article as well. Otherwise, the general bylaws would use one term and the zoning bylaws would use the
Right.
old.
Easy peasy.
So this article is kind of by way of example, one of the reasons that we've moved to these anticipated motions. This bylaw, a proposed bylaw amendment, when people see it, is close to 3 pages long, and to read it at length through the meeting really consumes a substantial amount of time. So folks who are faithful attenders of town meeting may remember the one in the gymnasium where the select board had put forth some changes. The advisory committee had not made any response, had not felt that it had been included in that process. So over the past 2 years in different ways, some smoother than others, but in the end, I think agreed to by all parties. There have been a series of amendments proposed to the advisory committee bylaws. And those are to, one, clarify the amount of time that the town moderator has after the annual town meeting to make his appointments. That was not clear. It almost made it appear as if when the meeting was dissolved, the moderator's ability to appoint was dissolved. It now includes the moderator in the process of filling vacancies which occur in between the town meetings. It provides for alternative dates by which the selectmen must provide the committee with the warrant. There's a little bit of added time in there. It increases the amount of time before the meeting that the committee must report out to the citizens its recommendations. So before the committee had to make its recommendations at least 2 days before the annual town meeting. That's been increased to 4. And it provided a fixed timeline by which departments are to respond to requests from the committee. There had been no timeline. It simply said if the that the committee had the right to request information. So now there's a timeline in there of 4 business days, just to be clear to everyone. And it makes some other minor clarifications. And I believe that, you know, as I say, there were little fits and starts here, there may be a minor change or two that not everyone was agreed on every single change, but as a group agreement, I believe the advisory committee has gone over this many times at length, and we're prepared to go forward in presenting this.
Again, while you were talking, Carter, I brought up kind of the multi-page view just to kind of prove your point that to read, you know, 2 or 3 pages of strike through or otherwise. That's why we send out everything ahead of time. So if people are familiar with the content first, or even to follow along with the discussion at town meeting, to basically read through that entire thing would be especially if we're trying to spend a short amount of time in that gymnasium, I'm sorry, that auditorium, it's a good thing to read the abbreviated version.
Right, and for regular attendees of the town meeting, they may recall that the zoning overlay bylaw last year for cannabis, I think that ran 8 pages or even more.
Right. Great. Article 12, the Veterans Advisory Board.
So a number of years ago, there had been created a Veterans Advisory Board. It was meant to be a sounding board for the Veteran Service Officer, provide some added input. And then the bylaw was amended a little bit. And over the years, it simply, despite the best of intentions of everyone, the original proposer, the folks who have agreed to serve, simply has not proven to be as useful and effective as the original sponsors had hoped. So with the support of the Veteran Services Officer and upon initiative of Mr. Bennett and members of the board, we're bringing you this article to dissolve or abolish this board. If it can't be effective, there's really no point in having it on the books. It just becomes a committee that's not filing a report or not able to do something. And as I say, this is upon the initiative of someone who's a veteran themselves, has the support of the Veteran Services Officer, and I hope will garner the support of the community.
Yeah, Carter, I know what you're saying as a past chair of the Veterans Advisory Board and understanding Chapter 115 and certainly some of the discussion we had during the meeting. I understand both sides of it. I can guess that veterans will wind up speaking out in favor or opposed to this article. But I think in the summary there, as you see on the screen, that it just hasn't been proved as not so much useful, but I think effective in terms of carrying out the mission of the Veteran Services Officer. And a lot of the community-based organizations that already exist in our community, even just to watch the American Legion Post 373 during the COVID crisis, we know we have activated veterans in our community. The Veterans Advisory Board just is not value added as it's been proposed here.
So let me just say that for those who might oppose this, and should it not be repealed, I would hope that they would give serious consideration to submitting a volunteer to serve your town form. And sometimes if this is not agreeable to the community, it does serve as sort of a wake-up call of, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't really know that existed. I'd
Right.
love to give some time and effort to that. So no, I don't want you to abolish it. Yes, I understand what the concern was all about, but I'm ready to serve my community again in this
Right.
role.
Right.
I just leave that as food for thought.
Great. Okay, Article 13.
So Article 13 is some sewer capital projects. There's 3 specific items that are in here. We want to first replace the electrical transformer down at the plant. There's 2 sort of sections to it. One has failed. We need to get this replaced before the other half fails. Some of this is done by Light and Water for us, and then we reimburse them for all of those costs. The second is what's called an inflow and infiltration study, and that is of the sewer collection system itself. Are there aging sections of pipe that perhaps have cracks and groundwater is getting into? Are there cross connections between the drainage system and the sewer section? Perhaps somewhere there was a catch basin that somehow many years ago actually didn't get piped out to daylight, but ended up getting put into the sewer system. We have to go through and do that. That is a DEP requirement. If we do not do it, we're at a point where they would most likely issue a consent order. You do not want to do that way. That will cost substantially more money than this, most likely. But more importantly is when DEP issues a consent order that requires you to do the study, they would most likely follow up with a consent order that tells you when and how you will implement the various portions of the study. So Bob McDonald, Tom Zielinowski, Mark Machete will speak to this much more intelligently, but that's what this study is all about. Finally, we have an aging bulldozer that essentially has failed. This is what is used to cover the remaining sewer sludge and the material that goes to cover that. And so we don't need a new one, but we do need to replace what is there. We can only build the material up for so long before we've got to get that bulldozer there and do that cover. Again, Mr. Machete, Mr. Zielinowski, I can't remember. We have a second Tom on the sewer commission. My apologies to him. I can't remember his name right now. But they'll be able to speak at greater length on this. And this is paid for with retained earnings from the sewer fund.
Yeah, that was that was going to be the point that I wanted to make, that when people look at certain capital items, like TCTV capital items, light and water, sewer, they come from an enterprise. They do not come from, they're generated like a working capital fund. And so that the town isn't expending tax dollars per se, but not coming out of the general fund or free cash. Tom Hurd, Tom Jelanowski, Tom Hurd, and Mark Machete.
Apologies to Tom Hurt.
Okay, moving on to Article 14.
This is the annual operating budget for the cable department. It does operate as an enterprise fund, and it is paid for with payments made to us by the cable company. Not much more I can say on that. I will say that if people really want to do a deep dive on the budgets themselves, that document is available on the town's website as well. A couple hundred pages, account by account breakdowns and justification for every item.
What I can do, Carter, is I'll put the link to these documents that we're talking about. It's one thing to mention them, but it's another just to have that easy click over. So in the comments, in the comment section of the final YouTube product, I'll make sure that I put the links to the budget document. Love the budget document, but we'll make sure that that's readily accessible so people can click over and look.
Article 15, there's a surcharge on the tax bills. The first $100,000 or so is exempt, does not get the surcharge. And that money's collected, and then we get a matching payment from the state. And the way that this starts is when you first receive the monies, it gets distributed to some sub-accounts. There are 4 items for which you can spend the money. And so there's a portion that's taken out for general administration, and then the monies are
Nope, he froze.
essentially administrative every year.
Carter, you froze for about 10 seconds there.
Oh, my apologies. So we get this a payment from the surcharge on the taxes. We get a match from the state. You can spend those money on 4 eligible things: administration, historic resources, community housing, open spaces, and recreation. And we have to spend a certain minimum amount of money on each of the elements. So we put the money into those reserves. We put the balance into the general reserve, and then it stays there awaiting appropriation out by town meeting, with the exception of the administrative account, which can be expended immediately.
Great, thank you.
Article 16 is an example of one of those expenditures town meeting is asked to vote upon. So you saw the money go into the community preservation reserves, and you saw that one of those was a housing or community housing. So the select board, we're losing affordable units at the day mill. We don't have a way to preserve them well. And we have not been able to generate a great deal of production of affordable housing or community housing, workforce housing, whatever term you like to use. So the thought here is to, and there's some restrictions as to how you can expend those monies. The intent here is $17,500. It would be used for legal counsel and a consultant such as the Citizens Housing and Planning Alliance to look at the creation of a affordable housing trust. That's a requirement of statute to spend the CPA monies, to sort out how we can preserve the affordable housing units we have at Day Mill and we've been losing, to take a complete overlook at the zoning to make sure there's no barriers to development, or are there things that we can do? So for instance, let's say that I have a house in Templeton and my mom wants to move in and I want to create a in-law apartment, but I don't want to do it just for 5 years. What happens after 5 years? Well, what can we do to give you an incentive to do that, knowing that you're going to have some use for this when mom has passed, without violating the general well-being of the neighborhood? So
Right.
we'll look at all those kinds of things and then come back to most likely the annual town meeting of 21 for implementation
Right.
of anything that we need town meeting action on.
Yeah, Carter, great summation. I think from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, and I think I'm speaking for the entire board, it certainly is frustrating. We want affordable housing in our community, and we're looking to increase that, not lose what we already have. So for those who would watch the Board of Selectmen meetings, and I think it's been at least 3, if not 4 times now that the board that I've been a part of has had to forward on a right of first refusal, especially with the Day Mill property. So this is an excellent. This is something good coming out of the town this year in terms of affordable housing.
Article 17 is an annual article to appropriate some dollars. We wish it could be more to help provide scholarships to our high school graduates for their costs of their higher education.
That's a usual suspect.
It is.
We're voting on this for years, so this is another one people are probably very familiar with.
In fact, truthfully, now that I'm thinking about that, might be a great addition to the consent agenda because it's been the same article for years now.
Right.
Article 18 is, again, as you said, I think you said a usual suspect. This is the annual appropriation of monies to the Board of Assessors to help keep property values up to date in accordance with state requirements.
Yep, and I know it was a big year for the Board of Assessors. A lot of work late or right in the beginning of the fiscal year.
Article 19, your town meeting has to vote to set the salaries of elected officials. In this case, it is the town clerk, the Board of Selectmen, and this is a stipend each, and the sewer commissioners. That will have to be amended. I'm seeing it right now. Thank you. In the drafting of the warrant, that was not cut as 2020. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, great. Yep. Those following along, we just had a quick typo that we identified right there. All right. Article 20, your favorite and mine.
So this is the big one. A lot of discussion this year. Uncertainty as to what the state aid will be. I would put this a little bit in the character of last year. Last year, we had uncertainty as to what the final town budget could be because we didn't know what the final school budget could be. This year, we don't know what final state aid is going to be. So we don't know whether or not in the fall, we might have to right size the budget. The important issue here is to have a budget that the organization can move forward with. Last year, we went through pretty much the same thing. We got through it, I think, reasonably well. We are encouraging folks to act to adopt the budget. Otherwise, we are forced into a series of 1 month at a time budgets until state aid is finalized and we can call a special town meeting, which has costs associated with it as well. And then in the fall, if the state aid is not sufficient to support this budget, then we'll do, and we have varying means to deal with it internally, we'll right size the budget to the degree that it needs to be. But failure to do it will create substantial work on the staff create substantial uncertainty within the organization at large, and will require additional, at least at one town meeting, if not more, in each and every town meeting carries costs with it.
I agree, Carter. And, you know, the Board of Selectmen had gone through a lot of the budget scenarios. You had tasked the Assistant Town Administrator, Adam LaMontagne, to go through and really give us a picture of what the situation is. There's a lot of trepidation. We're in phase 2. I know I see as I drive around, I see tents. I see for the restaurants and otherwise. People are starting to get through this, but there's still a lot of trepidation about revenue that the communities must make. One thing that came out, and it wasn't unanimous for the board, but one thing came out is that we believe that we are situated to be able to weather the storm. You know, I have some air quotes up there. As you say, right-sided, but that 9.8 figure that's our hard work that we went through the entire budget year to develop, and understanding how our budget works. We believe that we can get through at least with the right size plan in place to be able to, quote unquote, weather the storm and make sure that we're expending our budget the right way. Some of the costs, I know in Adam's description, July and August, there's a lot, there's debt service and otherwise, and it's very difficult to try and negotiate our complex budget if you don't have a authorization to spend and you have to go to 1/12. So a lot of good work here. I've been a part of the process for a few years now. We built resiliency. Roselli's audits of our books have gone very well, and we built resiliency in. So I feel really good about this article.
One item I'm seeing, the final warrant motion will strike the footnote 2 on account 420. I'm not quite sure how that got left there, but that'll be a cleanup between now and next week.
Okay, snow and ice. Great, moving along.
Article 21 is our annual capital budget. We've now been able to have 3 substantial capital budget investments. This is supplemented the 585,000 here by a separate article we'll get to in a minute, and our informal pilot with the light department that brings us roughly $60,000 in added. So continuing good investment on the capital front, and every item by department is broken down in the actual warrant article itself. I'll just note Baldwindale Elementary School costs of sales. We've been keeping the costs of counsel to negotiate with prospective developers, do the title searches, offering documents, all those kinds of things as standalone, so people can see those costs. And the costs of care and custody from last fall were there as well. Everything else, I think, people have seen before.
So
and again,
total capital expenditure of 500.
Yep, 585. And again, if anybody has a question of on a specific item, please just encourage them to email at the office, and we'll get them an answer as quickly as we can.
Great, thanks, Carter. Good looking capital plan there. Do have a go back on our 9.8 million. There's a question on YouTube. Another question from Deb Wilder. It says, you mentioned that if we do not see the state aid come in as expected, that we can internally handle that resiliency that I spoke about. Is that correct? Question mark. Could you expand on that a little?
It is. So we put forth our best projections based upon some financial models that we use. And our expectation was that new growth would be in the area of $65,000. It's actually going to be in excess of $150,000. So while we wouldn't normally do it, we would normally contribute that excess to the overlay reserve. In this instance, we can dedicate it to expenditure. We have some other revenues that we think are going to substantially exceed their marks. So even if state aid was cut by as much by 10%, we're able to deal within revenue projections to make that work. If it goes above that, and again, this is all, who knows exactly where all this is going to land. Even the best economists in the land don't know exactly what's going to happen. So we have some internal resiliency there within the model that we use to create the budget that could accommodate a shock of as much as a 10% cut. And then if it goes above that, we'll have conversations with the select board, the advisory committee, and the fall town meeting on how best to right size any other gap.
I agree, Carter. Again, very good way to lay it out there. Again, kudos to Adam. I know that you sat in a lot of the webinars. Adam sat in a lot of the webinars with Sean Cronin, I forget the language, deputy director or.
Yeah, I think he's I forget exactly. I don't want to get his title.
Right. He's with DOR and DLS. They ran through a range of different options. So one of the things that stuck out in the presentation was the use of the stabilization funds. And I think it was even a verbatim quote to say, "Hey, towns, if you're hurting that bad, then there's no better time to use something like that. That's why you put it aside." Again, that's not I don't want it to make it a third rail for us to discuss, but it is one of the tools that we can consider when we wind up getting more information along the way. Our June 17th annual town meeting, with the way that we've presented that budget, puts us in a good place to be able to carry on the capabilities and services that the town has. Thanks for that question. That was a good go back.
And again, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we've actually just done this.
Right. Yeah.
This fiscal year 20, we did not know what our school assessment was going to be. And we ended up sorting out how much we had to right size the budget. The town meeting gave the selectmen the authority to do that. They did that. And it was done without a great deal of pain or hiccup or uncertainty throughout the whole thing. So this is not new territory to us. We've just believed that this is the best thing to do for the organization at large.
And just a quick note, Sean Cronin is the Senior Deputy Commissioner of the Division of Local Services. So I want to make sure that I get that right. Okay, we are we're a tiny bit over time, but we are going to get back to, I think we're on the road home now at this point, Carter. We're on capital budget Part B, Article 22.
So this one is separate because we want to buy a new rubber-tired backhoe, but instead of appropriating all the cash, we have the possibility of trading in our excavator and possibly our aging grader. And the way we do this is when we get the quotes for the new equipment, we also ask for a quote on trade-in. At that same time, we put the equipment out to sale in auction. And when we open those auction bids and we open those sale proposals, we compare the auction price to the trade-in price. And if the trade-in price is higher than the auction price, we trade the piece of equipment in. But if the auction price is higher than the trade-in price, we want to auction it off, but we want to be able to use the monies towards the purchase of the grader. So this one is kept out separate because it does have a few more moving parts. And essentially what it says is you have X numbers of cash to buy this piece of equipment. And if that's the price after the trade-in, fine, great. But if you're going to auction it off, you can keep the auction proceeds to the extent that you need to buy the rubber-tired backhoe, and then the balance goes to the town's free cash bottom line. It's an attempt to try to maximize the amount of money that we get for the equipment for the benefit of the taxpayer by looking at both ways of disposing of the equipment.
Great, thanks. And you, we mentioned the price. I think I had the price up there. Yep. Okay, Article 23.
Annual Massachusetts Regional Technical School Assessment. Down a little bit this year because our student census count was down a little bit.
Okay, so our assessment this year looks like it's $622,689. And as you said, when they when their superintendent, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget her name, Dr. This is the second year that I've sat through her in her budget director's presentation. Their point was that we did have a lower assessment, but I thank Montechusett, Monty-Tech for coming down and explaining their program, and we're getting our value for the dollar on that.
Our annual assessment to the Narragansett Regional School District. The first year since I've been here, we haven't had to really, cross swords. It's within our ability to finance. We certainly, people hope, support it because we really don't want to force them into another 1/12. That's a distraction for them. They're going to have substantial challenges with everything that's going to take to get the Phillipson Memorial School, everything moved over to the Templeton Elementary School, getting all of that reorganized, and dealing with how to best educate the children given COVID. So we would love for the community to support this so they can have their budget and they can spend their time on what they really are best at, which is preparing to educate the community's children.
Agreed. All right, so that number there you can see for our watchers, $6,909,906. And we'll move on to Article 25. So,
Citizens petition, I will let it speak for itself.
yep. Now, I've been in town for many years. This is a citizens petition submitted by Peter Farrell and 13 others. This I have seen it before. I think many in town meeting will recognize that. So you can see that it has to do with public water fluoridation. I think Article 26 it also is fluoride legislation. The Board of Selectmen do not read the citizens petitions. So Peter Farrell in attendance will most likely, as he has before, get up and give the copious amount of information that he normally has with him on fluoridation and the public water supply. Article 26 is about warnings on water bills. Article 26 is for fluoride legislation. Article 27 is also a citizens petition submitted by Steve Currie and 15 others. And it has to do with quorums at annual town meetings. We do not have that concern right now, but as you can see here in the text, that the citizens petition is recommending an annual town meeting shall be 25% of the voters registered as of the previous January 1st. The previous January 1st year, once a quorum has been assembled. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that it's where we have no quorum now, that we're going to be adding a 25% amount of registered voters. Offhand, I think the number of registered voters, got my sheets, I've got everything taped up around my desk at home. Jump in at any time, Carter.
Well, I want to say that
I just want to get basic
Communities
numbers.
that have quorums, it can be a very real challenge. I've been in communities, where the meeting is sometimes sat there for 45 minutes to an hour, while others are scrambling, trying to get somebody to come down. And in this case, that would require attendance of over 1,000 registered voters. I'll leave it to Carol Harris and some others. We'll have some numbers for you, but I will tell you that your legislative function will be thrown into complete and total paralysis if a quorum is passed and in particular, this quorum is passed. It simply will not be achieved. It will not be workable. And I encourage everyone to attend. Government is decided by people who show up, and I encourage them to show up. And we do everything we can to get out the word of what's going on and to try to get folks there. But this will paralyze your organization and your ability to function.
Okay, thanks, Carter. All right, so Article 27, again, it's a citizen's petition to add a 25% of the town's registered voters that would constitute a quorum. That means if you're holding town meeting and you don't have that number, then you do not have a quorum, and the moderator cannot hold the meeting. Now, this was the page I was looking for earlier on the VES.
Right, so parcel 383, 384, 385, that's essentially where the parking lot is and where the building is. The first portion of 407 that comes in off of Cottage Street is kind of the driveway to the back. And this developer would be going in on lot 407 a little bit deeper, but there would be 50 units of market and affordable housing unit constructed on these lands as presented. And this is it's about 3.08 acres, if I recall correctly, 3.1
Okay.
acres. And that is what we're seeking authority from the town for the select board to sell.
Okay, yep, and that's referring back to page 13. Carter, there's a quick note right there. It says see page, as the warrant changed a little bit, it says see page 32, exhibit A for the site map. It's actually 33 for those following on it.
Okay, apologies. I'm not sure what happened there, but thank you.
We probably added some language that made.
Oh, I know what it is. The cover page on your, you're looking at the page number on your PDF.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
Which,
you're right.
Yeah, that's always
32.
a little confusing. Our cover isn't numbered. So yeah, people would need to add one page number to find it in the PDF. Apologies.
Nope, no problem.
We'll try to keep that in mind for future references. So the special town meeting warrant is a mea culpa. This is the 2021 sewer department operating budget. It was in the original draft warrant presented to the budget advisory committee and the selectmen on February 28th. It was in subsequent drafts, and somewhere between draft number 1 and draft number 11, it got dropped out. So the easiest way to deal with this is to call a special town meeting the same night of the annual town meeting. It's called for 6:30. At 6:30 or thereabouts, the moderator will call the special town meeting to order, and he would either get a quick action upon this or defer it to later in the agenda, or defer it until the annual town meeting's concluded. But this is the annual town operating budget for the sewer department, which operates as an enterprise fund paid for entirely by the fees of the users of the system.
Great. Makes sense. And I know we're a little bit over, Carter, but I think that was a good plain speak way to go through the again, advisory committee is going to talk, go in a little bit depth. I believe their pre-town meeting is tomorrow. Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, correct?
Tomorrow evening, 6:30 p.m. For those who watch this, we would encourage you to watch that as well, because that's sort of the citizens' watchdog. So yes, we hope folks get a chance to watch that. I know it's a lot of information to take in. And when you put up those links on your YouTube comments, Mike, if you would just put my email up there, so that if anyone has questions about the budget, wants to send them along, they can find that easily. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. Because I'm such a multitasker, I was trying to put the links in the live chat. And I think YouTube builds some restrictions in the live chat. So it won't be there in the live chat, but when you, if you're familiar with YouTube, there are comments underneath. Those will become active once we close out this this riveting daytime drama. Yep, as Deb said, it's tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. for the advisory committee. So in the comments, I'll put all the links that people that we talked about tonight, and just some of the other assorted documents, including the safety document, which has been pinned and is on the cover page of our town webpage. Dr. Harity, Carter, was the superintendent. I was trying to remember the name.
Ah, okay.
Yep, Dr. Harity. So I know we're over. I don't have a queue going for questions. Deb Wilder thanked us for our time. We did have, I think at any given point, we had about 11 or 12 watching the live stream. So I think, Carter, your recommendation to really reach out, provide some outreach to the residents, the voters, to make sure that we talked about the town meeting as a process, and then town meeting as going through the warrant articles, making sure that people just had that good heads up in what to really pay attention to as they review their voter information guide. Thank you for putting that together. Thank you for Holly for putting that together.
Thank you for your time, Mike, and I guess I will see you on the other side in 36 minutes.
In 36 minutes, yep. And the Board of Selectmen have a business meeting this evening. We have a couple important guests to start out, as it is an important meeting for at least one of our members. Again, there are no more comments, but again, I will put the information in the comment section with Carter's email address, and we hope to see as safely possible and as many as possible, as many as we can fit in safely, June 17th. Look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.